on CNN, where the rush to normalize this president and to revert to being able to judge politics specifically and exclusively on the basis of demeanor. And to be fair, this was also part of the problem with the strategy of the Clinton campaign and to a certain extent with Democrats now, which is to criticize Donald Trump because he's a buffoon, because he says things like, I can grab pussies, or because he goes in front of inappropriate places and talks about how he won the election and tells outright fabrications about things that are obvious as opposed to things that, you know, if you're a journalist, you would know. You know, like he can get up there and say, I'm 8 feet tall. And everybody can say, well, that's clearly a lie.
Well,
But when he gets up there and he says lies about policy or lies about immigrants, that would actually involve somebody who did, you know, a Google search to find out about. Then
aren't we
journalists
back in
abdicate.
George W. Bush territory?
Exactly. And here is Van Jones in his rush to pronounce this.
He became president of the United States in that moment, period. There are a lot of people who have a lot of reason to be frustrated with him, to be fearful of him, to be mad at him. But that was one of the most extraordinary moments you have ever seen in American politics, period. And he did something extraordinary. And for people who have been hoping that he would become unifying, hoping that he might find some way to become presidential, they should be happy with that moment. For people who have been hoping that maybe he would remain a divisive cartoon, which he often finds a way to do, they should begin to become a little bit worried tonight. Because that thing you just saw him do, if he finds a way to do that over and over again, he's going to be there for 8 years. Now, there is a lot that he said in that speech that was counterfactual.
All right, let's okay. He qualifies his comments by saying, yes, he lied in the speech and said things that weren't true. But if he finds a way to send ground troops into foreign countries for no apparent reason and gets one of them killed and has the opportunity to say that, point out the widows of those, or widowers of those, he is going to be so presidential. And remember now, what did he do? He just said, there she is. And what does he mean at that moment? I mean, what is it that he actually did? What did he actually do at that moment? This is so absurd that, I understand the idea that he's saying this metaphorically speaking, because we know Donald Trump was already the president. Donald Trump was the president when they sent these people on this mission. So the idea that Donald Trump, it wasn't clearly his idea, right, to have this woman there. I mean, this morning, earlier in the morning, he said in an interview that it wasn't even his fault. The idea that he read this speech and delivered that, essentially what Van Jones is saying is that being presidential is either glorifying the death of the military, personnel, or just being able to deliver a fairly saccharine moment that every president seems to do. I mean,
well, let's be honest. Functionally, that's kind of true. I mean, I actually was reminded, I have to say, and I know that, like, there are distinctions here because this was just logistically totally botched, but, like, that to me, like, this speech reminded me in the reviews of, like, okay, we're in George W. Bush territory, like we said before, because he's lying about policy instead of just, like, things that you were pointing out, like actual literal, no, you're not 8 foot. And then something like that was kind of, to me, a bit like the Obama section, frankly. Like, there was a lot of people who were willing to overlook civilian deaths in Yemen and Pakistan and those types of raids with Obama. And then Obama would give, much better than Trump, but a classy sort of tip of the hat to service people. And that seemed to satisfy a lot of people culturally in terms of signifiers.
I think that's true.
So it's not terribly surprising.
Imagine, though, that Van Jones ever made that declaration that that's the moment that Barack Obama became presidential. And I certainly don't think
they're
that
saying
happened
it's the
on the
moment
right.
he became like Barack Obama, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean,
Obama didn't need to do that. Obama was always classy.
Van Jones in that moment had a Glenn Beck thing going on where he was
Yes.
obviously feeling the sound of his own voice, and he goes like this, and I want to go like this, and like that sort of thing.
And I think that's also just the pathology of always trying to buy currency with the other side that some liberals have. It's almost like, hey, Jeff Lord, like, you're never going to concede a point, but watch me be reasonable.
right. Well,
Maybe
I think that's
he's
also
trying to keep his job.
I think that's also a business. I think that
That's what I
there's
mean.
certain-
It's a business.
It's not
and it's
necessarily a pathology as much as it is a
but it's a business
core
opportunity.
brand proposition.
But it's a core brand proposition on our side. There's no major
that's
conservative
true.
market for like, when are you going to be reasonable, man?
Right. Right. You don't hear Gorka at CPAC with people coming up like, Dr. G, when are you going to be a little bit more reasonable on
Dr.
this
G,
whole
don't you need to
Islamofascist?"
don't you need to tip a hat to the Sufis or Indonesian Muslims to establish that we're not deranged extremists? Because if we do, then liberals will only get more upset.
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.